In the once glorious city of New Avalon, the skies were no longer blue. Ash clouds loomed heavy, and the Justice League's emblem that once shone from the watchtower above the earth now flickered like a dying star. The League had fractured, not from an outside force, but from within. It began with a secret, one buried deep within the foundations of the Hall of Justice. A truth only the 5 founding members, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, knew. A pact. A decision made in the early days of the League to contain a force so powerful it could destroy the multiverse itself. They called it Protocol Zero. But the secret didn't stay buried forever. It was Cyborg who uncovered it, hidden in corrupted data buried in Martian Manhunter's last transmission. His message was clear, they lied. We were never saving the world. We were sealing it away. One by one, the founders began to fall. Not at the hands of villains, but through betrayal, mistrust, and guilt. The Flash was the first. Barry Allen vanished into the Speed Force during a rogue mission. But not before leaving behind a data spike encoded with a confession, "I broke the seal." Within days, reality began to shift. Cities blinked out of existence. Memories rewrote themselves. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, spiraled next. Haunted by visions of alternate timelines, he defied the Guardians and returned to Earth, only to be branded a traitor. He was last seen fighting his own core, whispering about a false dawn. Wonder Woman stood alone at Themyscirus gates when they closed forever. The Amazons called her a betrayer of Gaia. She had made a blood vow with a forgotten god, Cronax the Sealer, during the founding of the League. That pact was breaking. And with it, so was the barrier between dimensions. Batman retreated into the shadows, as he always did. But this time, there was no signal, no answer. The Batcave was found in ruins. His AI, Alfred, remained active with only one chilling log. He knew this day would come. He is preparing, but not for war. For judgment. Only Superman remained. The last symbol of hope. But he too began to fade. Whispers spread through the stars, of Kal-El creating a phantom city orbiting the sun, filled with duplicates of his fallen friends. A place where he could correct the future. But Earth was unraveling. Cities folded in on themselves. Civilians remembered events that had never happened. The Teen Titans turned on each other. Aquaman vanished into the Mariana Trench, reportedly chasing voices that called him the Key. Then came the message, broadcast through every screen, every frequency. The founders failed you. The League must fall for Earth to rise. Watch. A new group emerged. Cloaked figures calling themselves the Severance. They claimed to be descendants of the original multiversal timeline, erased by Protocol Zero. Their goal? To bring balance by erasing the 5 founders from history entirely. The world split into 2, those who worshipped the memory of the League, and those who demanded accountability. Skirmishes erupted between metahumans. The Justice League's legacy was on trial. But something deeper stirred, an ancient power sealed beneath Atlantis, now awakened. Its voice echoed through dreamscapes, whispering one name, Veilron. Superman knew that name. So did Batman. It was the code word embedded in the original Justice League charter. A failsafe. Not to protect the world from evil, but to protect it from the founders themselves. And now, Veilron had returned. The skies turned crimson. The watchtower, long thought abandoned, powered up one last time, broadcasting an emergency beacon across space and time. Heroes, old and new, living and forgotten, answered the call. Because in the end, the fall of the founders wasn't just the end of the Justice League. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The Judgment Era had begun. The beacon from the watchtower didn't just summon heroes, it tore through dimensional rifts, pulling in variants of Justice League members from across broken timelines. Some were monsters twisted by regret. Others were saviors who had lost their Earths. And one was a version of Bruce Wayne who had never taken off the cowl, not even in death. They called him the Hollow Knight. His voice, digitized and scarred, came through the watchtower's failing intercom. We built a weapon, not a league. Now it returns to us, unforgiven. The world was now a chessboard, each square a fractured memory or future. Metropolis was split into 3 overlapping timelines. Gotham roamed, yes, roamed, on mechanical legs across the eastern wastelands, fleeing a storm that spoke in Wonder Woman's voice. And in the Arctic, the Fortress of Solitude had inverted into itself, becoming a mirror world ruled by a spectral Superman who believed the real Kal-El had already perished. But the most chilling moment came when Martian Manhunter, long believed dead, reappeared. Not in body, but in mind. He hijacked every telepath on Earth and delivered one thought to every living soul. They broke the pact. Now the fifth dawn rises. No one knew what the fifth dawn meant. Not even Dr. Fate, whose helmet now floated above an empty cloak in the ruins of Salem. But Constantine had a theory, and it made even him tremble. The Founders weren't just building a league, he said, cigarette glowing in the shadows of a war room. They were building a prison. For something older than gods. Something they couldn't kill. They called it the First Cause. It was then that Diana returned. Not as Wonder Woman, but as Nemesis Diana, a being bound in celestial armor, forged in the sun's corona, her eyes glowing with Kronax's eternal fire. She had merged with the forgotten god in desperation, believing it was the only way to restore balance. But she wasn't here to save them. She was here to judge them. Her blade, Aeon Fong, could cut through time itself. And with one swing, she erased a century from Central City, rewriting history so that the Flash never existed. Citizens forgot Barry Allen. Even his parents stared blankly at his empty bedroom. And then came the screams. Across the globe, statues of the Founders began to weep molten tears. The League's old sanctuaries, Mount Justice, the Watchtower, even Titan's Tower, sank into the earth as if swallowed by guilt. But deep in the ocean trench, something moved. Aquaman's trident breached the surface, glowing with bioluminescent sigils. Behind him stood creatures not seen since the pre-crisis era, Leviathan beings made of starlight and shadow. They answered only to the one who had unlocked their seal, Arthur Curry. His message was short and final. The fifth dawn is not an event. It's a reckoning. And it's already begun. Meanwhile, inside the Phantom City orbiting the sun, Superman, Kal-El Prime, stood before rows of stasis pods. Each one contained a copy of the Founders, moments before their fall. He walked past them slowly, whispering, "If I can't fix my friends in this world, I'll bring them from another." But as he reached for the console, something cracked in the dome above him. A hand, silver, endless, and void of time, reached in. Vailron had arrived. He wasn't a man. He wasn't even a being. He was the concept the Founders tried to erase. Consequence. And he had come not to fight the League, but to undo them. Valoran's form shimmered like broken glass, reflecting every timeline at once. Where his face should have been, there was a shifting storm of memories, deaths, betrayals, victories that never happened. His voice didn't echo in the room, it echoed in Kal-El's mind. "You sealed me away to spare the world from consequence. But consequence is truth. And now truth will consume you." Superman launched forward, fists blazing with solar fury. But the moment his punch landed, the entire Phantom City shattered like porcelain. Vailron hadn't just countered, it had erased the entire construct from having ever existed. Every pod, every duplicate of Bruce, Diana, Hal, Barry, all gone. Kal-El fell into the void of space, gasping, not for air, but for answers. Back on Earth, something began to happen. Every screen on the planet, every phone, watch, satellite feed, displayed the same image. The original photo of the 5 Founders, standing together, proud, heroic, but now distorted, with their faces missing. People panicked. And then, forgot. Memories of the Justice League began vanishing like smoke in the wind. Children forgot their heroes. Historians found blank pages where the League once stood in history. Even Lex Luthor stared at a monument he couldn't remember building. The Severance moved quickly. Their leader, a cloaked figure with a voice that cracked like dry ice, stepped into the United Nations Hall with a simple demand. Erase the League from all records, or Earth's core will collapse on itself in 13 days. And they could prove it. They detonated Keystone City, not with bombs, but by reversing time to before it existed, then accelerating entropy to its final breath. One moment it was there. The next. A crater filled with fossils from a city that had never been born. And yet, all hope had not vanished. From the shadows of Gotham, a young girl appeared, unknown, undocumented, yet carrying the signature of Bruce Wayne's bloodline. She called herself Echo. Raised in a pocket timeline by a version of Batman who had survived Doomsday's virus, she carried within her a quantum shard, one of the original 5 fragments of Protocol Zero. She wasn't alone. John Kent, son of Superman, re-emerged from exile in Warworld, having seen visions of the Judgment Era in the dying breath of the new gods. Alongside him came Damian Wayne, now the Grim Raven, having fused with remnants of Trigon's essence after the Titans' collapse. They didn't come to restore the old League. They came to replace them. But first, they had to find the last lantern. In a forgotten quadrant of space, drifting through the remains of Sector 2814, John Stewart, the only lantern not corrupted or erased, guarded the final key. He had sworn an oath to never return to Earth unless one of 2 things happened. The Founders admitted their failure. The 5th dawn arrived. Now both had happened. He descended toward Earth, ring dimmed, voice cracked, eyes filled with the weight of too many lost timelines. And with him came one sentence carved into a comet trailing behind his descent. They will rise again. But not as saviors. Back in the ruins of Themyscira, Nemesis Diana stood before a reflection pool. Inside it, she saw her original self, kind, fierce, unbroken. The image whispered, "Undo what you became, or be the blade that ends them all." And far below, in the Batcave, buried under 60 layers of lead, obsidian, and cryptic quantum firewalls, a heartbeat returned. Not Bruce Wayne, but something wearing his face. A mind fractured across too many choices. A being forged from every what if Bruce ever feared. And it opened its eyes. "This time," it said in a voice not entirely human, "I break the cycle." The heartbeat grew louder. Not in sound, but in presence. Every time a decision was made across the world, whether by hero or villain, it echoed in sync with that pulse beneath the Batcave. Inside the sealed chamber known as the Null Vault, the being stood. Its skin resembled torn Kevlar stitched with memories, each scar a timeline. It wasn't a Bruce Wayne. It was all of them. The sum of every Batman who had failed. Every Batman who had killed. Every Batman who had broken the code to win a war that could never be won. The Severance feared him more than Veilron. They called him Omega Bruce. And he was awake. He whispered into the dark, and the cave responded. Lights flickered. AI fragments reassembled. Files once deleted, Project, Purge Point, the Nightmare Maps, the White Protocols, reactivated. Then he spoke a single word that shook the Earth's magnetic field. Rebuild. Elsewhere, Echo was decoding her quantum shard, revealing it to be not a weapon, but a map. Not of Earth, but of the hidden 6th Founder. A name erased even before the First League Charter. One who had predicted the fall, built the safeguards, and then vanished. His name, Jor-El Prime. Not Superman's father, but Superman's first clone, buried in Earth's core millennia ago by Kryptonian Council exiles. They had feared his mind. He had seen the 5th dawn, long before Earth had heroes. Echo, John Kent, and Damian, calling themselves the Fracture, set out to awaken Jor-El Prime. But standing in their path were the last remaining loyalists to the original League, a cyborgized Shazam, a venom-enhanced Hawkman, and a spectral Zatanna who could only speak in reverse to prevent erasing the fabric of reality. Meanwhile, above the planet, Veilron watched. Not with malice, but with inevitability. "You can stitch broken heroes into new cloth," he said, "but you cannot wear hope from torn lies." And in that moment, the sun dimmed. For 12 minutes, Earthstar lost all fusion output. No explanation. No flare. Just dark. Superman, Kal-El, felt it instantly. His cells starved. He collapsed in a crater of what used to be Metropolis. But something else rose from that same crater. A boy. Barefoot. Eyes glowing white. Wearing no emblem, just silence. He walked through the dust and laid his hand on Kal-El's chest. The Man of Steel gasped as starlight returned to his blood. "You're not the last hope," the boy whispered. "You were the lock. I am the key." And just like that, he vanished. Who was he? Constantine had a name. One he refused to say aloud, but scratched it onto the back of a tarot card and left it floating in the wind. Kal-El Omega, the Error Child. Born from the moment the 5 founders sealed Protocol Zero. A backup soul. The universe's final countermeasure. But he had been born wrong. In every reality, he destroyed the balance. And now he was loose. Veilron smiled. For the first time, he felt something close to fear. Because what comes after consequence? Only one thing. Reversal. Deep beneath the crumbling ruins of Atlantis, where forgotten gods once whispered across coral tombs, Aquaman stood before the Vault of Tides, a chamber older than the ocean itself. Its door pulsed with tidal rhythms that didn't match any ocean on Earth. It beat with a rhythm only one being shared, Kal-El Omega. Arthur reached forward with his glowing trident, now etched with the sigils of the Leviathan Choir, creatures from the void between dimensions, sworn to sing the world's fate into reality. The vault opened, not with sound, but with silence. Inside floated a sphere. A living, breathing memory of a timeline that never came to pass. A world where the founders succeeded. A world that never needed justice because balance was never broken. But it wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet, it bled. Aquaman recoiled as red liquid dripped from the sphere, splashing into the saltwater. Where it landed, time reversed. Coral undid. Bones reformed into warriors. Ghosts screamed. This wasn't just a memory. It was a weaponized past. Back above, in what remained of Washington, D.C., the Severance gathered for their final broadcast. Their leader, still cloaked in dimensional static, revealed their face for the first time. And the world gasped. It was Wally West. But not the Wally anyone remembered. This Wally had lived through 800 timelines, watched his children erased, his legacy twisted, his name forgotten. He was the cost of the League's choices. And now, he would be the arbiter of their undoing. I was the fastest man alive. And I watched the world die. Slower than you could ever imagine, he said. Now you'll watch it heal, one founder at a time. His target, Batman. But not Omega Bruce. Not the Hollow Knight. The original Bruce Wayne. The one no one had seen. Because he wasn't dead. He was hidden. Inside the Time Pit, a relic created by Tempus Fuginaut at the edge of reality, a place where moments could be rewritten, but only once and at the cost of another. Bruce had locked himself there. Waiting. Watching. Bleeding regret. But Wally found him. And for a second, time paused. Both men stared, 2 broken icons of a failed legacy. And without a word, Wally handed Bruce a data crystal labeled, "The Moment You Lied." Bruce took it, inserted it into the neural port at the base of his skull. And then he remembered everything. The founders hadn't sealed Veilron alone. They had sacrificed a 6th. One who had been erased from memory, even from the multiverse's root tree. Her name was Kara Zor-El. Supergirl. She had warned them, begged them not to use Protocol Zero. And when they did, she offered her own essence to become the seal. They accepted. Then erased her. But her sacrifice was imperfect. Because one piece of her remained. Not in Krypton. Not in space. But in the Error Child, Kal-El Omega. He was her echo. And now, he was growing. Meanwhile, back in the shattered moon base where Echo and John Kent attempted to reboot the Celestial Archive, Damian Grimraven suddenly collapsed, his eyes burning with Trigon's fire. He began speaking in 3 voices. His own. His grandfather Ra's al Ghul. And Kara. "He's not a mistake," the voices cried. "He's a message. From the universe itself. A reminder that you don't get to erase what you're afraid of. You must face it. Or burn." John looked at Echo. Echo looked at the shard. It was no longer a map. It was a key. And it was pointing to the center of the sun. Where the final showdown would begin. Not between good and evil, but between truth and those who buried it. As the sun trembled, pulsing with unstable light, the key activated, ripping a hole into its core. Echo, John, Damian, and the fractured remnants of the League dove in, their bodies dissolving into light as they reached the heart of the solar storm. There, suspended in golden fire, stood Kal-El Omega, fully awakened, his body radiant, but his eyes hollow, torn between Kara's compassion and the fury of abandonment. Before battle could begin, a voice echoed from the burning void. Kara. Not a memory. Not an echo. But her soul, reborn from the sacrifice that once sealed fate. She stepped forward, touched Kal-El Omega's face, and whispered, "You were never the error. You were the reminder. The world must not be protected from consequence. It must be strong enough to carry it." And with that, Kal-El Omega wept. The fifth dawn collapsed. The sun stabilized. And the fractured timelines began to merge, not into one perfect world, but into a new era, one where no lie could be hidden, and no hero stood above the truth. The Justice League was gone. But from its ashes, something greater rose. Justice without gods. Hope without illusion. Legacy earned, not inherited. And across the stars, the universe breathed again.